And good morning to all of our attendees. Thank you all for joining. And so we're looking at bank reconciliation in Dynamics GP this morning. Now, most of you all that are joining us may already be on Dynamics GP. Some of you, as in a lot of cases, may not have implemented bank reconciliation or may have implemented but did not continue with using the module. So the training today will give you an overview of how we set up bank reconciliation, how it can be used, and towards the end, we'll also discuss that scenario that I just mentioned. You had bank recon set up in the past, but you did not continue to utilize it. How can you move forward to kind of start afresh? Okay, so let's get straight into the training. The first thing we're going to look at is the setup area for bank reconciliation. And what we're going to look at is the posting setup. The posting setup is always under administration for all of your modules. And what the setup determines is a few things, but what it determines is, do you want your entries to go directly to update your GL accounts, or do you want them to go to batches in your general ledger? In our scenario this morning, we want our entries to update our GL right away. What that means is when we enter a bank transaction within the bank module, we want the GL updated right away. We don't want to have to post the batch later. And of course, you have both options based on your organization. So our bank entries are bank deposit. And here you see we have both post to and post through general ledger. It takes a little while to grasp it, but of course, if you are going into the setting, you will discuss it with your Dynamics GP consultant, right? Post to means the entry will go to the general ledger and it will be in a batch waiting to be posted by someone in your department. Whereas post through means the entry updates the GL right away. So we have both selected, both work together if we want to achieve post through, update GL right away. So I've already set all of my bank type entries to post through general ledger. So we have bank transfers, bank transaction entry, and of course, reconcile bank statement. So all of these are set to post through already. If you make a change here, you will need to select save. So now that we've looked at that posting setting, we're now going to look at setting up of the bank recon area. And the bank recon area is actually one of the simplest areas to set up in GP. Now bank resides under the financial module. So it's the same area where you have your general ledger and your fixed asset area. So down to our setup menu and bank reconciliation. And as I said, it's a very simple setup. This is the one setup window we have within the bank reconcile module. And after this, the only other mandatory setting will be setting up our checkbook, which we're going to look at next. So within this module, we say what is our next number for our next bank reconciliation. And here are some settings that you don't even have to make any changes to. You can accept as is, or if you choose to, you can make changes. For instance, when your users are going to input data entry, do you call a receipt RCT or RCP, or do you call a deposit by a different name? And this is what is going to show up on the entry window here. And these are the codes that are going to show up against your bank entries. So for instance, an increased adjustment will be IJ001002. So this is the short name, and this is what you'll see when you're doing data entry. And that's the bank reconciliation setup window. So for our training this morning, I have set up a brand new checkbook. So we're actually going to be doing a bank reconciliation from scratch. And our checkbook setup is under the cards area in financial. And our checkbook that I've set up is optimum. right? So once we set our checkbook ID and our description, we set the currency for the checkbook. Very important, we set the cash account for the checkbook. What the cash account means is the GL account that represents this bank account. So every bank account you have should have its own GL account. And if I were to click here to this link field, this is the GL account that I've set up for this particular bank. The other information here is not mandatory. It's good if we input our bank account. Here, it's for informational purpose. It doesn't affect our bank record. Our next check number and next deposit number, meaning the next check transaction or the next deposit we enter, it's going to take the number from this screen. So if ever you need to change that, you know which screen you need to go to, the checkbook maintenance screen. Also, notice our last reconciled balance and last reconciled date is 0. And the reason it's 0 is because this is a brand new checkbook. So my system is on April 2027. We're a little bit into the future. And so all of the entries that I input today are now going to flow to this checkbook. So our last reconciled balance and date will stay at 0 until I actually perform my first bank recon, which I will do today. But as I start entering transactions, if you notice, my current checkbook balance and my cash account balance is 0. As I start entering transactions towards this checkbook ID optimum, we are going to see the checkbook balance and the cash balance increasing. Just to explain what's the difference between the two. Your checkbook balance represents your subledger. So your subledger being your different checkbooks within the bank area. Whereas your cash account balance represents this GL account that we just spoke about earlier. Right? Now at any given time, when we're starting a new checkbook, yes, they will be the same. And if you're posting immediately to the GL, yes, they will always be the same. But if you're not posting immediately to the GL, you will see differences between your subledger and your GL until both are always posted up. Right? Now when we're reconciling the checkbook, we use the current checkbook balance. And at the end of the process, we also compare to our GL as well. So you all will see all of them. Now just to mention the integration between all of the modules in GP. So your bank module and your checkbooks are tightly integrated with GP in terms of the accounts receivable or sales module and the accounts payable module and the general ledger module. So each time I have an entry in accounts receivable that is cash or bank related, the entry will have us use a checkbook ID. And so if we don't have a checkbook ID, we can't complete the entry. And so once we enter a checkbook ID, it means the entry flows to that checkbook in the bank module, and it also flows to the GL. Once that entry is posted, it flows to those two places. Similarly, in payables, once we have a payment, because all payments are cash or bank related, each payment must be aligned to a checkbook ID, and therefore that payment, when it's posted, flows to your checkbook, and it also flows to your general ledger account for that checkbook. Now the bank area in GP also operates like a subledger, just like the payables and just like the receivables. So what that means, if we were to go direct to our general ledger, let me just show you a quick example. If we were to go direct to our general ledger and enter general ledger journal, notice there's no checkbook ID within this window, and therefore that means our checkbook would not be updated. It's a similar thinking if we were to enter something related to payables or receivables direct in GL. It does not flow down to those ledgers. So the entry must originate, if not in payables or receivable, then the entry must be done within the bank area, and that would be within your bank transaction entry window. So this would essentially be your journals entered here in bank transaction entry window for everything that is GL related but not captured in AR or EP. Examples would be interest, interest income, interest expense, any miscellaneous debits, fees, things like that that are not captured within AP or AR. And so we enter here as a transaction. So when we looked at the bank reconciliation setup window and the checkbook maintenance window, those two windows actually conclude setup for bank recon. So now we have moved into the transactional area of the bank recon. So what I have done, I have a lab for bank recon that is going to take us through some of the types of transactions. In fact, we'll cover all of the types of transactions we can enter within the bank module, and we will then use those transactions to perform a bank reconciliation, a small bank reconciliation, so that it's not confusing for everyone and you will grasp the basic concepts at least, right? So our scenario, as I said, we have a new bank, a new checkbook setup, which means a new bank GL setup. As we saw, our balances are 0 on the optimum checkbook, right? As you could see, last reconciled balance and date is 0. Checkbook balance and cash account balance is 0 as well. So now we'll enter our first transaction. All right, so because we have $0 in our account, our first transaction is going to be a transfer of $50,000 from our existing account to our new bank account. And as I said, my system is on April. So what I'm going to do is keep all my transactions from the 1st to the 14th of April. And we are actually going to do a bank recon mid-April, because you don't have to do a bank recon month end. You can do it weekly if you want, or every 2 weeks as the case may be. So the first thing we're going to do is enter transfer. So instead of bank transaction, we go into bank transfers. Right, the next transfer number available comes up. You notice the XFR in the front of it. That comes from our setup window. And we're going to use the date, the 1st of April. All right, so we're transferring from an existing checkbook, right? 50,000. And we're transferring our new checkbook optimum. By the way, it is not an unusual scenario for you to want to transfer from US to your local currency or vice versa. And that can be done in this window as well. Right? So this is it basically. We have put our two checkbook IDs. Our GLs have defaulted that are already linked to these checkbooks, and we input our amount. And I could probably just copy this description and paste it here against the distribution. Okay, and that's it there, and then we post. Once I close this window, the posting journal will print, right? For this first exercise, I'll show you the journals, but we don't need to print the journals throughout. So here we're seeing basically our entry is captured, the transfer from account and the transfer to account, and we are seeing our GLs, our debit and credit. Okay, and this is what is going to the GL as well. This is our posting journal. So now our transfer is done. We move on to another transaction. So we now have a certain amount in our bank account. All right, so next step, during the first week of operation of this new account, which is for a new division, we have 3 payments that have gone through. And for the purpose of showing you the bank area, I'm going to process these payments through bank transaction entry. Note majority of your payments will come through accounts payables. Now within this bank transaction entry window, before I continue with the three payments that I'm going to process, let me just talk about this window and the types of entries that we can process here. So as you can see, by default, what came up is enter transaction and the type is check. In this case, this is a payment out. If I were to drop down on enter transaction, is enter receipt, which is payment coming in, right? So payment out, a payable, receipt, kind of like a receivable payment coming in. And in this same window, we can void a transaction previously entered or void a receipt previously entered. So if I leave my option on enter transaction, by type, I can enter a withdrawal, an increase adjustment, a decrease adjustment. What we will use a lot in our real life scenarios will be increase and decrease adjustments to record interest income, interest expense, bank charges, those kind of things. So back to our scenario, we have three payments out, and so we will leave it on enter transaction and type of check. My first payment was on the 5th. We'll select our checkbook ID. Right, and the next number that defaults here that the system gives us actually comes from the window where we set up our checkbook ID maintenance window. Notice here our next check number. So now it's on number 2 because number 1 has already been given to us in this window. So we're paying to North Traders for purchase of a desk, $50. Okay, and automatically you see, because it's a payment, it's a check transaction, automatically you see a credit our bank GL 1160. All right, so note that this is part of the transaction where we see the entry to the GL, and of course the other part of our transaction here is where our checkbook is going to be updated as well. All right, and so our expense account is the 6150 account, $50. Now, if we wanted to split this among more than one expense account, we could do that by just tabbing to multiple lines. Okay, so once all is well, we select post. Now, when I've finished entering my three payments and I close this window, this is when my posting journals are going to print for the three transactions. If we want, as we enter, to print journals, then we close the window each time. So you have both options. All right, my next transaction is on the 6th. Again, it's also a check, it's a payment. All right, so we are purchasing some business cards and the amount is $25. Again, we automatically see the credit to our bank GL account. And then we need to enter the other side of the entry, of course, the expense account. And that's it, our second entry is done. And our final entry is on the 7th of April. Notice our checkbook is coming up by default because I haven't exited the window, so it keeps coming up by default. And notice our check number is incrementing. All right, so we purchasing supplies. All right, this entry is $10. And of course, if you are not like me and know the GLs offhand, and you need to look up your GL, you simply click, you look up here and select or click your search to search for a particular GL. All right, so that concludes our 3 payments. So I'll select post. And once I close this window, as I said, my posting journals will print. I'll just print the first journal. And as I mentioned earlier, each time I post, my checkbook gets updated as well as my general ledger account gets updated. So here we're seeing the 3 entries, we're seeing the amounts, the GL, the dates, etc. Okay, so now that we've done a transfer, we've done some payments, we're now moving on to doing a receipt. Again, I'm doing the receipt within the bank module, but majority of your receipts will come across from accounts receivables or sales. Now, in terms of using the bank module for receipts or for payments, it will only be for miscellaneous entries. So we're going back to the bank transaction window because here we enter receipts as well. Because as you notice, when I did the payments earlier, I typed in the company or the vendor name, and similarly with the receipt. So these are miscellaneous entries. If you have customers or vendors that you have payments for, those need to come across from whether it's the sales module or the payables module. So my receipt date, I'm going to use the 8th of April. Right, my receipt number defaults, RCT in front of it again comes from the setup area. And so here we're receiving funds for research. And we're receiving $100,000. Okay, again, we see the entry directly going to our bank GL. In this case, it's a receipt. So the entry is a debit to our bank. And then we enter the corresponding income account. In my case, it's other income. So I know my other income account off the top of my head, but let's just say we wanted to look for it. So I'll do a search by description. And here it is. Right, our $100,000. And after this, we just have one other receipt. Okay, so I'll select post on this receipt. And then there's another on the same date for repayment of expenses. Okay, and this one is for a small amount of 10. Good. So now we have 2 receipts entered. And we post those receipts. Again, our posting journal will print. I'll just print the first journal. And this is our bank transaction posting journal and basically captures all of the information we would have just entered. And very important, gives us an audit trail code. And this is the code that will show up in the general ledger. Okay, so at this juncture, now that I've created or entered some receipts, I just want to point out that at this step, I get a lot of calls from clients because they have entered receipts in GP, but they are not seeing them against the checkbook so that they could perform a reconciliation. So this usually happens when, so it's a user issue, and it usually happens when there's a new user who's carrying out bank rec, or maybe someone is on vacation and someone is holding on. And so this is a step that is usually missed. Once you enter receipts in bank recon, you need to do one more step, which is create your bank deposit. because the bank deposit is what is going to show up on your bank record, not the individual receipts. So let me just explain why. Most companies on a daily basis might be receiving several checks or cash or different types of payments. And what they would do is at the end of the day, they will make a deposit. So they might make a deposit with 10 checks or 10 checks and some cash. And so that entire deposit is what is going to show up on your bank statement. And that is the amount you're going to look for when you're going to reconcile your bank statement. You're not going to look for the 10 individual receipts. So to avoid having to look for those 10 individual receipts and then reconcile them at the point you're doing your bank reconciliation, you kind of do that upfront. So whatever is the total of your deposit slip that day, you come into the bank deposit entry window and basically you lump those receipts to create your deposit. I think we have a question. Okay, so I think Michael wants us to repeat. Okay, so let me just repeat again. So I'm just going back. Let's go back a little bit. So just now, I was in the bank transaction entry window. And in the bank transaction entry window, I entered 2 receipts. Now your receipts will come either from here, which is miscellaneous receipts. The bulk of them are coming from the accounts receivable module. As I mentioned, a lot of times when new persons are going to perform a bank recon, they realize they are not seeing the receipts on the bank recon. And the reason for that is they are missing one small step. After receipts are entered in the system, you need to go to your bank deposit window within the bank areas under financial transaction and bank deposit. You need to go to this window to lump all of your receipts together. And let me just again repeat the reason why. On a daily basis, your company might be receiving several checks or several amounts of cash towards different customer receipts. Those receipts might be written up on deposit slips and deposited at the end of the day. So we use an example, we have 10 receipts and they're being deposited at the end of the day. The total of that deposit is what is going to show up on your bank statement. The bank does not capture the 10 individual receipts, the total. Therefore, when you're going to reconcile your bank statement, you are looking for that total. You are not looking for your 10 individual receipts because it makes the process a lot more tedious. So what you do up front, even before you go and reconcile your bank statement, once you have sent your deposit to the bank, you come to the bank deposit entry window in GP and you lump your deposit. So if there were 10 different customer receipts that went on one deposit to the bank, you come here and you check off the 10. So we leave enter edit as the option. Note we could also void in this window. We put our deposit date, right? Now my deposits were done, my receipts were done on the 8th of April. So I could say, okay, I deposited on the 12th, or I could put it on the 8th, right? Of course, we select our checkbook. Now the type should always be deposit with receipts, right? Whether it came from receivable or you entered it within the bank recon module, it's always deposit with receipts. These others here are used for different scenarios that are very rare. So what you are using is enter edit and deposit with receipt. The system will give you a next deposit number. If you are capturing your own deposit number from your deposit slip maybe, you can override this number if you wish to, right? The description is optional. And then you have your receipt type. Do you want to see all, or do you want to see all checks, all cash, all credit card, whichever makes it easier for you when you're checking off. In my case, now this is a summary view, and if I click lower, this is my detailed view. In my case, it's easy. I just had 2 receipts. So I don't need to, put in any criteria, just the receipts on my screen, and I am going to check off both of those receipts, the 100,000 and the $10. So what that means then, if you notice at the bottom of my screen, my total deposit amount is $100,000 and $10. What that means on my bank recon screen, which is my final step when I'm reconciling my bank statement, I will see this entire amount. I will not see the individual amounts, and that is what I want to see. I want to see the entire amount of the deposit because that is what shows up on my bank statement. Okay, so I hope that was clear. And so once you enter here, you can save in case you need to come back, you need to check something you needed. You are missing a receipt, you need to enter it and then come here and add it to your deposit, right? So you can save if you wish to. If everything is okay, you can post. Before I post, I will print my deposit worksheet. So you can print this and keep it, right, along with your deposit slip. So this basically lists everything that you have checked out. And it lists by type, checks, credit card, etc. And of course gives you your total deposit amount. So this is your bank deposit worksheet. At this stage, I'm going to post. Before I post, let me just quickly confirm that I am supposed to select both transactions for my deposit. And yes. Okay, so I'll post. Right, and then my bank deposit posting journal will print. As you will notice, there are no GLs on this bank deposit posting journal because this is simply a process of your receipts that have been previously entered and already sent to whichever GL. These are just lumping them together. So there is no GL impact here. So we close that and now we're moving on. So now we have adjustments to enter and we enter adjustments in the bank transaction entry window. So let me see what type of adjustments we have. So the bank is preparing a 10,000 US wire transfer for our company for prepayment of insurance, right? And there's also a $15 service charge with it. So we are recording both as individual entries. We're going to record the 10,000 as well as the $15 service charge. So enter transaction, and so this is a payment, and this payment could be, we can leave it as check if we wanted to, or we could flag it as a withdrawal. And the date is the 8th of April. Right, select our checkbook. Right, and so this is paid to Humongous Insurance. And so this is for prepaid insurance. Okay, so it's $10,000 and it's a payment out. So there's a credit to our bank account of 10,000, and then I believe we have we do have a prepaid insurance account. Yes. So 10,000. Now the $15 service charge will go to our bank fees account. So we'll actually separate it out. We wouldn't send it to the same account, right? And I'm going to record the service charge separately. And if we wanted to, we could record it here as well in another line item. So I'll click post on this entry, and now we'll go on to the service charge. Right, and we have a bank fees account. And if I want to double check that that account is correct, click the account and click the arrow. Okay, first I have to put the amount. All right, so I click the account and I can click my hide and show here and we see it's going to bank fees. or we can click the arrow at the top to get the name of the account, bank fees. Okay, so this is it for our adjustment. And this was actually not a withdrawal. This is my mistake. It's a decrease adjustment, right? And we are allowed to make that change and still continue with the entry. The entry did not clear off. Okay, so I'll click post here. And my posting journal will show those two transactions that I just entered. Okay, so we have the prepaid insurance of $10,000 and we have our $15 bank fee. Now, after the fact, we realized that the amount of the $15 bank fee was incorrect. It was actually a $10 bank fee. So we need to correct that. And we correct that by 1, voiding the fee that we just entered, and 2, entering a new fee. So if we were to go back to the bank transaction window and we select void transaction, I believe we did it on the 8th, select our checkbook. Now, because we have void transaction, if by number we click lookup, it's then going to show what we entered. And here is our $15 decrease adjustment. And when I bring it on the screen, I see, yes, this is our service charge. So I'm voiding that transaction. And then I'm going to now enter the correct amount, which was supposed to be 10. All right, and if we had to void a receipt, it's very similar, except we would select, instead of void transaction, select void receipt. Good. So once we've checked our entries, okay, we post. And so here we'll see our void entry as well as our new entry. Okay. And so we actually moving along to the final step now, which is to reconcile our bank. Before we reconcile our bank, I'm going to take a look at our checkbook or our checkbook register. So there is more than one way we can look at our checkbook register. We can print the report, or we can go to our inquiry window. So we can print a report here on the checkbook, or we can go to our inquiry window to checkbook register. Okay, so these are our entries here, and we are seeing, I think I missed something though. I'm feeling I missed something, but we'll see. So we're seeing our $15 void. It's there, it's not removed from the system. The system keeps an audit trail of it, but there's an asterisk next to it showing us that it has been voided. And as I said, I may have missed something. Let me just check against the previous recon I did. Okay, no, I didn't miss anything. Good. So if we look at our checkbook register, it's telling us our balance is $139,915, and we could print this as well. In this window, we could look at reconcile and unreconcile. Now, this is a new checkbook. So if I were to say I want to see my reconcile items and I redisplay, there'll be nothing except our void, because nothing has been reconciled as yet. So I'll leave it on all. And if we wanted to search for a specific entry, we can search by number or by date and use our from and to here and redisplay. if I wanted to look up a transaction, so for instance, someone wanted to know what is this $15 void about, we use the drill down feature. So we select, I click on the number underline, and I can say if I want to see the original entry or the voided entry. So let's say I want to see the voided entry, and this, we just go straight back to the transaction. Okay. So that is on our subledger. I am curious, what about my general ledger? Did my general ledger update immediately according to the change I had made in my posting setting when we now started? So let's look at the general ledger and see if it changed immediately. Not change immediately, but update immediately. Okay, so my general ledger is also saying my total debits 150, my total credits 10,110, and the offset, if you look at the top here, the account balance is also saying 139,915. So at this stage, my general ledger is matching with my checkbook register, which is good news. And of course, if there's any difference between your general ledger and your checkbook when you perform your bank reconciliation, usually it means one of two things. Either someone went directly to the GL and processed an entry that is related to bank or cash, which means they didn't pass it through one of the other modules, and therefore it did not update your checkbook register. So then that entry would have to be reversed and processed through the correct avenue so that it touches the checkbook. That is one scenario. And the other scenario may be that you have unposted entries. So as soon as you post in payables or sales or bank, it updates your checkbook immediately. But based on your posting setting, as we mentioned at the beginning of the session, your setting may be to go to a batch and then someone posted the general ledger. So that could be the scenario as well. It just has not been posted to the GL as yet. So those are two things you can check for if you have differences. So we're moving on now to actually our final stage. We had a new checkbook created. We had transactions going to the checkbook. We had transfer from one bank to another. We had checks being paid out. We had receipts done and deposit lump. We had adjustment. We had a bank fee. We had a void, right? So basically we had every kind of transaction that we could within the bank area. And now we're moving on to reconcile bank statement. So I have my bank statement from the bank for this account. And the bank statement gives me a balance of 39,910. Okay, and my bank statement ending date is the 14th of April. Now, as I said, you can perform your bank reconciliation at the end of the month. You can perform your bank reconciliation weekly, as the case may be. Some people can even perform a bank reconciliation daily because the bank activity is so much that, you know, there's a dedicated person to bank reconcile and they carry it out daily. So it depends on the need of your organization. Okay, so when we click reconcile, it takes us to a select bank transaction window, which I call my reconcile window. And based on the date ranges that we just entered, transactions further than that date will of course be cut out. Now we have a new checkbook, so we don't have anything further than the 14th of April. But if we did, it would be cut out because we are not reconciling for that period. We're reconciling up until the 14th of April. And so if I reference my bank statement, the first transaction that is showing as cleared or on the bank statement is the transfer of the 50,000. So this transfer, we are checking that off. Then there are my 3 checks, the one for $50, $25, and $10. They have all cleared. Then there's a 10,000 wire transfer, which is this withdrawal here. That has cleared. And then there's a service charge of the $10. That has cleared. Notice our deposit has not cleared the bank. So deposit is our outstanding transaction. Also notice, as I mark a transaction or I unmark a transaction, my amounts to the bottom of the screen increase or decrease. So my total number of payments and the dollar amount, my total deposits and the dollar amount. Also notice to the bottom right of my screen, there's a difference of $5. It means there's an entry that we have not captured. And here on my bank statement, I'm actually seeing that entry. It's $5 interest income. So that entry still has to be input in the system. If there is any difference when we are performing this bank reconciliation here in this screen, if there's any difference, we won't be allowed to reconcile. So if I were to click reconcile, the difference must be 0 before you can reconcile this checkbook. Okay, so we must find all differences before we reconcile. That does not mean that it causes a big issue for us, because I could simply, let's say I had to query that $5 difference. I can simply say okay, and I could save on my bank record, and I could investigate and come back again to the bank record. So I found my $5 difference. How do I enter it? I have 2 ways of entering it. I can go to the bank transaction entry window, where we will most of the session enter in different types of transactions, and you can use there for increase or decrease adjustment. Now the $5 is interest income, so it will fall under increase or decrease adjustment. But if while doing my bank recon, I find the entry and I want to enter within my bank recon screen without having to exit the screen, I can do so by going to the adjustment button. And here, well, actually here, these are my ranges. So I'm entering interest income, and I am going to enter the GL account. Right, and the amount being $5. Now notice this is just a 1-line entry, because the other part of the entry is already captured by the system. It's understood that the credit side of the entry goes to this cash account here that is tied to the checkbook, and of course it goes to the checkbook ID. So I'll say okay here, and now my difference is 0. Just a note that this adjustment that I've just processed within this window does not get posted until I've completed this bank recon. So just in case you entered an adjustment and you said okay and you save, and you find you're not seeing your adjustment in your general ledger, it's because it's not posted as yet until I click reconcile. Okay, so across from difference, there's a little arrow here that gives us a summary, which is actually the information we see on our bank recon edit list, or that first page that we would attach on our bank recon. And so this is our summary here. The bank statement amount we entered was $39,910. The deposit in transit here, we're seeing this deposit not cleared, $100,010. We get our adjusted bank balance. Then the system captures our checkbook balance based on the date we set, 139,915, captures our adjustment that we just passed, and gives us our adjusted book balance compared to our adjusted bank balance, which in this case, they are the same, so the difference is 0. Now, we're basically done. So what we need to do now, by the way, before I click reconcile, just to point out, of course, in real life, you will have much more volume within this window. And so you can display by type, because it makes your checkoff a little easier, whether it's date, payment, deposit. And you can also select ranges of transactions here. Also to mention, available within GP is the electronic bank reconcile feature, which basically does what I have done here, checking off, but what it allows you to do is download your bank statement from your bank and upload it to your bank reconcile module, and the system does that matching for you, right? So just so you know, that's the electronic bank reconcile feature, and if you want to know more about that, you can contact us at operations@optimus.guru. Okay, so now we're moving on to reconcile, and once we click reconcile, the system will prompt us to print 4 reports. And if I go to the print button here, these are the 4 reports, and these are 4 important reports, right? These are your bank recon working sheets, right? So we get reconciliation edit list, which is basically this report here. We get our adjustment edit list, which is the adjustments that we pass while we are in this window. Your marked transaction report, everything that I've marked off, and your outstanding report, what has remained unmarked. So you can print these reports beforehand, by the way. So if I say okay, I'll be prompted then to print all the reports. Or we can just go ahead to reconcile, and we'll again be prompted to print these 4 reports. Okay, so we'll be prompted to print each of them. And in fact, we got 5 reports because of the adjustment. The adjustment is now posting to GL, so that is our 5th report. So here's our bank reconciliation edit list. I think we have a question. Okay, so the question from Michael is if we want to reprint the 4 reports. So the great news for you all is that previous versions of GP, we could not print these reports. So it was always advised before you click reconcile, in case anything goes wrong, print those reports beforehand. However, now we can easily reprint all 4 reports. So I'll show you that in a minute once we've gone through these here. So first of all, we have our reconciliation first posting journal, which is a summary of what we have, what was captured during the recon, and usually this is your first page that you print and attach to your bank recon working papers. Then we have the bank adjustment posting journal, which is just the $5 entry that I would have processed. And notice the audit trail code is captured on these, and this is the audit trail code that you can trace from the GL back down to your transaction. Next is our cleared transaction posting journal, and cleared meaning everything that we marked on the screen when we were performing the bank rec, so everything that cleared the bank. And we have our totals at the bottom. And then we have our outstanding or uncleared transaction report. In this case, it's just our deposit. And remember, our deposit was made up of 2 entries, 100,000, and then there was a $10 entry. And then the final is because we had an adjustment when we were processing the bank recon of that $5 interest income. This is the entry that goes across showing our audit trail to the GL as well. Okay, now, so the question was, how do we reprint these reports? So, as I said, the good news is that you can reprint the reports now. Previously, we couldn't, or we might be able to reprint 1 or 2 of them. And so now if we were to go to bank posting journal, we have the bank transaction journal, the bank reconciliation journal, the bank adjustment journal, the cleared transaction journal, and all of these and the outstanding reports. These are the 4 reports that we just printed, and so you are allowed to reprint them now. So let's print a couple of them. So we look at the reconciliation, and then we could probably look at the last one. So the reconciliation journal. And as you would notice, when we were going through our prints, we were seeing this number ending with 2 at the end of it. So that is the number that is captured as the audit trail code. right? So this is our report here again. So in case anything goes wrong and you don't get a print when you click reconcile, you now have the option to print after the fact, and notice there's a reprint at the top showing that there's a reprint. Let's look at, let's say if we wanted to print the outstanding transactions report. Again, we want to capture the audit trail that ends at number 2. And here it is, right? So, and all of them are there. As I said, the marked transaction report is there, right? The clear transaction report, sorry, as well as the bank adjustment journal. So all 4 of those reports you'll be able to reprint. Okay, so now that we have done our bank recon, let's take a look again at our checkbook balance. So our checkbook balance is now saying 139,920. Previously it was 139,915, but there we processed this little entry of interest income here of $5. So our current checkbook balance is now 139,920. Very important though, if you look at your current cash account balance, which means the GL account that's tied to this checkbook, it's 139,920, which means both balances, the bank ledger for this checkbook, as well as the general ledger balances. And it's important that when you complete your bank recon that you ensure you also balance with the general ledger. And we can do this a couple of ways, right? So this might be enough, but you might need to print the GL as part of your working papers with your bank recon, edit list, etc. So we're going to look at 2 ways where we could also capture this cash account or this GL account. So one is under the inquiry area. We're going to go to detail and we're going to bring up that account. Right, so it was the 1160 account. And of course, in my scenario, we just have a handful of transactions. In a real life scenario, you would want to put your date range or your source document, etc. Right, but most important for you might be a from and to date to capture the information that you need. Right, so here we're seeing the balance for this GL account is 139,920, which matches up with what our checkbook is saying, 139,920, and the checkbook is also saying the cash account is 139,920. And we can print that. And so let's go, we can print from that inquiry window, but let's go to the reporting window where we can print the GL. So if you were to go to trial balance, detail, right, we want to make sure we capture our bank GL. That 1160 account, right? My date range is there already from the 1st of April to the 14th of April. Good, and we might want to print this report, as I said, and attach with your bank recon documents. And as you would see, the net of the debits and credits come to the ending balance, which is the same 139,920 that we are seeing on the bank recon working sheets as well as on your checkbook register. Okay, so that concludes our walkthrough session of a mini bank recon, but keeping the bank recon small is what will help you to grasp the concepts a little better rather than confuse attendees with a large amount of transactions. So we actually coming to the end of our session. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'm holding on a couple of minutes in case you have any questions. You should have either a chat or a QA where you can type your questions for me to see. Okay, and while I'm waiting, I'm just reminding you all what we looked at here is the standard bank recon in GP. As I said, a lot of you may have a scenario where you are not live with your bank recon, you're live with other modules in GP, but not your bank recon. You can contact us about assisting you with this process, moving to new checkbooks, etc. And so we have a documented process for this kind of situation where even though you had transaction going to your old or your current checkbook IDs, how we can move forward. So you can contact us on that. Also, if you are interested in electronic bank reconcile, where you upload your bank statement to GP and the system does 99% of the matching for you, we can also have discussions with you about that. And for any of those situations or any other queries, if you need training, etc., you can contact us on operations@optimus.guru. So I'm not seeing any questions. I don't know if that is a good sign. I'm hoping that's a good sign and that you all were able to understand the training and sink in the information. So without any ado, we'll end off the session for today. I want to thank everyone for taking time from your day to attend our training, and we look forward to seeing you all at future trainings. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.